I want to ask you all a question. What was the most important NBA trade of the last 10 years? I'm not saying the best guy to be traded or even the one that led to a title. I mean, what trade most influenced the league we have today? Some might say the trade that sent Paul George to the Clippers. Others would say the Harden trade, or the Harden trade, or the Harden trade. None of these are the answer. In my eyes, the Pistons trade for Blake Griffin was the single most influential move of the last 10 years of basketball. Not just for the shockwaves it sent throughout the association, but for how it shows how much the league has changed in the last 7 years. Here's why. First, a little background. In September 2017, the Little Caesars Arena opened, becoming the new home of the Detroit Red Wings and Pistons. The Pistons ownership kicked in a pretty penny to play in a small arena downtown and had to pay that off. Unfortunately, the roster was mediocre and the team just couldn't fill the new stadium. So what do? If you watch my ratings video, you might remember that I don't buy that the NBA is in trouble financially. Part of that is you never hear worries about attendance anymore. The league's done great since the pandemic ended and fans could re-enter stadiums. The NBA has only been a TV sport for about half of its history since it signed its first cable deal in the mid-1980s. Therefore, the league has cared about butts in seats far longer than it's cared about eyes on the screen. This trade signifies that. You just don't see teams trading for butts and seats anymore. That means a trade that's not really meant to help bring a title, but is meant to help out from a business perspective by filling the arena, getting some more TV games, things like that. However, with a mediocre Pistons team playing an unflashy style in a small, economically depressed market with a new arena the owners had to pay off, it's no wonder that this became an issue. So instead of taking years to rebuild like a big market can, the Pistons made a hasty move that helped them keep the Little Caesars Arena filled and the fan base mostly happy. On January 29, 2018, the LA Clippers sent Blake Griffin, Willie Reed, and Bryce Johnson to the Detroit Pistons in exchange for Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, Boban Marjanovic, and 2 first-round picks. That year, neither team qualified for the playoffs. The following season, both teams qualified but were bounced in the first round. So, if neither of these teams could even sniff the second round, how could I call this the most important trade of the last 10 years? Because of everything that it set in motion. When NBA teams trade, it's part of a long-term play to either improve for the chance at a title or to rebuild and secure assets for the future. Most teams do that anyway. I think the Bulls kind of just do whatever they want. The Griffin trade began the Clippers' rebuild from the Lob City era, defined by him, DeAndre Jordan, and Chris Paul. Tobias came to LA in 2018 and left for the Philadelphia 76ers in 2019, where he would bring back 2 more first-round picks. These picks would later become the centerpiece of the trade that rocked the NBA world in summer 2019, setting the stage for a dynamic duo of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in LA. That trade also sent a promising rookie to Oklahoma City, the player we now know as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Already, we're seeing the effects of the Blake Griffin trade, but it goes even deeper. Going back a bit, remember when I said that Tobias Harris was sent to Philly? Back in 2018, he was this promising, almost all-star level forward, capable of scoring inside and out. Earlier that season, the Sixers also traded for Jimmy Butler, fresh off a heavily publicized dispute with his coach. With the addition of new star players, Philly were ready to dominate the playoffs. Then Kawhi Leonard made the big shot, and things got complicated. Both Tobias and Jimmy were due to hit free agency during a frenzied offseason featuring multiple suitors with cap room. Philly had 1 max slot available and made the decision to extend the younger Tobias while sending Jimmy to South Beach for almost nothing. So if you ever wondered how Miami made 2 finals in 5 seasons and why Embiid and I have the same record in the Eastern Finals, you can thank the Blake trade for that too. Let's go back to OKC for a sec. They're the biggest winners from this trade by a mile, since they picked up a perennial MVP candidate in SGA and a bucket of draft picks, one of which has already yielded All-Star Jalen Williams. Still, let's go back to 2019 for a sec. This trade also began Oklahoma City's rebuilding efforts. With Paul George head to Southern California, it only made sense to completely tear down the team. Days after the George trade, Russell Westbrook was sent packing to Houston after 11 years on the Thunder. I think we all forget how big of a trade this was. Russell was their first draft pick as the Thunder after moving from Seattle. He was their MVP, who was the guy who stayed after Durant left. And trading him was a massive deal. Not only did this trade deliver OKC even more picks, but also reunited Westbrook with his former teammate James Harden. After those two were bounced in the second round of the bubble playoffs, neither were happy in H-Town, and both were gone in a matter of months. So the Blake trade indirectly set up Russ and Harden on these 5-year odysseys, both trying in vain to win a ring in the twilight of their primes, directly and indirectly affecting the destinies of the Wizards, Nets, Lakers, Sixers, Suns, Clippers, and Nuggets. Look, I can go on for days with this stuff, but I hope you get my point by now. I just want to take a look back at a seemingly ordinary trade that truly changed the league. If you want to be cynical, you could do that for just about any move. I very well could have made a video about how a trade between the Cincinnati Royals and Buffalo Braves set the stage for Jimmy Butler's exit from Miami. But I didn't make this video just to comb through Basketball Reference. I do that on my own time anyway. I think the Blake trade matters because of that backstory I was talking about earlier. How these off-court motivators created this franchise-altering transaction. In every econ course I've ever taken, there's this implicit assumption that we are all rational actors making the best decision possible. That's just not true in this crazy, crazy league. It's important to remember, for all the analytics and basketball intelligence in the world, these teams are still run by people. People with the same flaws and duties that you and I have. We want to think that the people in the boardroom are making decisions based purely on winning, but that is so often not the case. Sometimes guys get drafted because they played a 39-year-old Michael Jordan in pickup. Sometimes players get traded for printers. Of course, I'm never caught off guard by a strange front office move. Don't forget, still a Jets fan.